Hi, Jessi.
Hi Sheila, how are you?
Good, good. I'm really excited to be talking to you because it's been a while since we worked together, and I always really admired how you were really easily able to communicate the things and inspiration around nutrition and holistic nutrition, and that's just been a really big inspiration for me. So I'm glad to have you here. Jessi McLennan is holistic nutritionist, and maybe I'll get you to talk a little bit about what you do, just in a few sentences, and we can roll into the interview.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, I'm a holistic nutritionist, and I work mainly with one-on-one clients. Um, Most of the clients I'm working with at the moment, it's around weight loss. Their main sort of goals are with weight loss. Um, but I also work out at the Chopra Addiction Wellness Centre, and of course, that's where we met and where we connected. And over the last couple of years, I've really taken what I've learnt at the centre and the really holistic approach to health, and I've integrated that into the way that I work with people one-on-one with my nutrition clients. I'm a big believer of, when it comes to food and diet and nutrition, there's much more to the picture than just counting calories or just breaking food down into fats, carbs, and protein. How we feel, how we perceive the world, what's going on, our stress levels, our hormone levels, all of those things are just as important as the food and have just as big an effect on our body as the food that we're actually eating. So I bring all of those kind of aspects into a coaching session when I'm working with somebody one-on-one.
Awesome. So I love how you've been able to bring in some of the sort of body, mind, spirit approach of the center into your work. That's really great to hear that, because I know there's a lot of wellness or addiction centers that don't have that piece. So that's great to hear that it's been working its way into your methodology.
Yeah.
So really, this day is about body, mind approach to eating. And I know for me, right, it's right at the refrigerator is where I, have my body mind check in, just see what my body is doing in that moment, because there's a need, but it's not necessarily for food. So I really, practice this one, and I feel like it's a really important piece for people to get in touch with, something else that might need to be nurtured or nourished in that moment. So I think that's the important part. And I wanted to get a little bit into the story of you and how you kind of, maybe even more recently or maybe in the past, have had that time where you really wanted to put self-nurture first, or maybe even were forced into it like I was. But was there a catalyst of some kind where you put self-care just at the top of the list, and what was that?
So I'll be really honest here. When we first connected and you suggested that maybe you would ask me that question, I was really worried, because I thought, oh my God, I'm probably just like everybody else in the kind of health and wellness and support caring industry that usually puts self-care when it comes to themselves at the last thing to do during the day. And when I knew I had to answer that question, I was like, I don't do anything. I don't have any routine. I don't get up at 6 o'clock and do yoga regularly. I don't do anything like that. And I thought, I'm going to be a terrible person for this interview. And I really started thinking about it. I was like, well, surely I do something for myself. What do I do for myself? And what does self-care really mean? And what does it mean to me? And when I started thinking about that question, I just started thinking, okay, so what are the things I actually do for myself that make my life easier or make my life simpler? And maybe they don't seem like big things because I do them every day, but maybe it is self-care. And what I do, what I would classify as my self-care, I do a lot of meal planning. I spend time on weekends to set myself up for the week. so that during the week I have more time in the evenings, and I have more time with my family, and I'm a lot calmer and a lot less stressed. And when you forced me to think about that question, it really made me realize that that is actually self-care. And I've made that a priority over a number of years because of what I do, because I run my own business and I work for myself and all the thousand things that come with that. Plus I have 2 children, so all the thousand things that come with that. And I was definitely getting to a point during the week where I wasn't looking forward to that after 5 o'clock time period, because I knew dinner had to happen and my kids were hungry and I wanted to spend time with my kids, but I had 1,000 other things to do. And it was always just this big stressful thing that happened at the end of the day. Yeah. So I think that was kind of the catalyst for why I made meal planning a priority and why I would actually classify that as self-care.
Absolutely.
And I know that might sound a bit funny because often people think of self-care as doing something passive. But that's always what I think of self-care as anyway. I'm like, oh, imagine if I could just do yoga for an hour in the morning, if I made time for that. And while I think at some point in my life that will fit in and that will work into my day, at the moment, I also think an active sort of thing can be self-care as well, because it means that I am more passive in the evening because I take that stress away, if that makes sense.
That's lovely. I love that. And when I hear you talk about it, what just popped into my mind was an image of listening to one of the doctors at the Chopra Center, Dr. Larry Klein, talking about the reason why he came to the Chopra Center and thought it was important was because it was coming at it from a cellular level, which means right from diet, and the changes that we can make on a physical level. And so I love that you brought it there, because that really stands out for me as one of the reasons I thought that it was important to do the body-mind connection and to look at what you're actually putting into the body, right, as your fuel, and the intent behind that, which is so beautiful, is spending time with your family and really being with your kids, being present with them versus kind of rushing around and doing all that. I think that's really awesome example of self-care that you're bringing to the table.
Thank you.
Really super great. And I was thinking too, like, was there any barriers to really making that happen? Was there, hiccups along the way?
There's hiccups every weekend when I plan it. And I think that's just life, right? There's always things that come up. There's always kids' sports, or there's commitments, or there's wanting to connect with people, wanting to catch up with my friends. And all of those things are equally important. I guess we could say that those things do come up and get in the way, but I have learned over time to really make that time on the Sunday, my prep time, a priority for me. Because I just know that it helps me out during the week. And I always come back to that little thought. I always ask myself, like, what would Jessi of the future say to you if you do this now for her? I always think of that. I always think, what's Jessi of Thursday night going to think of Jessi on Sunday if I meal prep for her? I mean, she's so happy.
Right. And I love that really points to being a friend to yourself, which is part of, self-nurture is literally acting like a friend to yourself. So I love that you bring in your future self as someone you can relate to, and do things for, that's beautiful. Love that. So it sounds like, you're using visualization almost of your future self, and really picturing yourself in the future. And, as I know, I'm sure lots of people have heard the research done around people who, especially people in the Olympics, who see ahead what they're trying to accomplish or what they're wanting to bring about, the more times they actually picture it, the more they've done the studies say that the more likely they are to win the gold.
Yeah, so, I love that. I've read the same.
Yeah. And so like what I hear you doing is that on a different, just in a different aspect. And I love that tool. And then the last question, well, a couple last little bits. One of them is, has there been some significant payoffs to that shift? And I know you talked about your time with your family in the evening, but can you tell me a little bit more about how that's impacted you to have that more time, or any other impact that you see as significant?
Yeah, and that's definitely the payoff for me is time. I think time is just one of the most valuable things in the world, and the time and the enjoyment of the time. I think those are two of the biggest payoffs. When I spend that time on a Sunday to meal prep, it just means that I'm kind of, like I mentioned, like I'm so much calmer and I can connect so much better with my family. And the payoff I see there is my kids are much calmer. When my kids have my attention and I'm present with them, they're much nicer children. Everything's so much easier. I love my kids. My kids are fantastic. But I think just like everyone else's kids, when you don't pay them attention, they do everything they can possibly do to try and get your attention. And when you don't have time for it because you're busy trying to do other things, it's unenjoyable sometimes when you're in that situation of someone who's needing your attention, you don't have the time for it, and it's just not a fun place to be. Wow. So for me, that's the biggest payoff, is just the environment that I get to be in at nighttime is such a nicer environment when I've planned and when I make time.
So calmer, I can just imagine, your physiological system kind of really benefiting from having that central nervous system really, down to a nice dull roar.
100%. And I'm just smiling because I can picture myself in the past when I've been worked up and I'm trying to get things done, and you're telling your kids to set the table or sit down and whatever it is, and you feel yourself like, and you can't eat. It's really difficult to eat or enjoy eating when you're up like this. It's so much easier when you're in this.
Rest.
Well, that was easy.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And is there any practices that you have, other than this one, that is, it sounds like it's a non-negotiable, which is great. It's non-negotiable in your sort of self-care tools. This one sounds great. Is there any other ones? And if not, that's fine, because I know I did not prepare you for this question.
That is non-negotiable. No, at the moment, I would honestly say, just because it's a busy time of the year, like when I go to bed, that's kind of non-negotiable for me. I go to bed pretty early. It's like 10 o'clock, 10:30, I'll be in bed. And that's fairly non-negotiable for me. Like that, I commit to that.
I love that one.
You feel better.
Yes, I'm really like, your energy of going to bed on time. Gonna put it right in here. Yeah. I need that one.
It's at the point where, and I know this sounds so silly, but if it was say 9 o'clock and my husband said, "Hey, do you want to watch a movie?" I said, "No, it's actually too late to watch a movie," because I would know that would end late. It would probably end at 10:30, but then it'd take me half an hour to wind down and get ready for bed. And I don't negotiate that. That's nope.
Love it. Love it. Great. So awesome. So I know we're talking a little bit about, how can we access the body's wisdom when we go to, choose what we eat or prepare what we eat or eat in the moment. And, I know you had a few different things that you thought were important around that. the real body mind approach to the eating itself. Can we talk a little bit about, I know for me, a lot of times it's around portion size. So it's like what's on my plate or that kind of thing. Also the snacking for me is another area. So I wanted to kind of just unpack that a little bit and see if there was any tools that you had around those things. And maybe if you talk a bit about it, set it up, and then we'll move into an actual guided practice for people that could kind of going to tune into what maybe happens for them around these areas, if that sounds okay for you.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of, when it comes to some tools and being able to tune into your body's wisdom, really is what it is. It's when it's around food, being mindful and tuning in to the cues that your body's giving you. And your body is always giving you signals, whether it be signals that you're in a dangerous situation or signals that you're hungry. You're always receiving these signals. And sometimes we ignore these signals because we're doing other things. And I think one of the most important tools when it comes to food is really learning to tune in to your hunger and fullness cues, and to really understand what they feel like and know the sensations so that you can identify real hunger or false alarm hunger. And false alarm hunger, we can talk about that a little bit more, but it's basically, it might feel like hunger, but it's not actually real hunger. It's not that physical sensation. And I think learning to tune into that, it can be a really useful tool for just helping you to navigate, should I be having a snack now? Or am I really hungry for that? Or is there something else that I'm not addressing? And once you can start picking up on those little things, it's like a ripple effect. Everything, you start to notice other things and the other emotions that you might be feeling.
Yeah, I love the false alarm. I mean, that's just a perfect way to put it. Yeah. I love that really sticks out for me. That's great. Yeah.
And because what real hunger is, it usually starts with some sort of physical sensation. And it might be a physical sensation such as, your classic one is a rumbling in your stomach. You can feel your stomach rumble when you're hungry. And that's a true hunger feeling. It's coming from your stomach. And if you feel your rib cage, your stomach is actually right under your right rib. It's kind of where your stomach sits. Okay. And usually when you feel hunger, it's up in that area. It's, kind of closer to your ribs. That's where your stomach will rumble. You might feel other sensations, such as you might feel a bit tired. You might feel a bit lethargic if you're running low on food. Those can be some of the more subtle feelings of true hunger. And when you eat, when you're truly hungry, food is really satisfying. You're really good. When you're hungry and you eat, it's a good feeling. You feel like you're nourishing yourself. And I think there's an old saying about that, right? Hunger is the best. What is it? Hunger is the best gravy or something? I don't know. Can't remember. But basically, when you're hungry, all food feels good and all food tastes good when it's true hunger.
Yeah. Well, I just literally had a rumble in my It's like lunchtime and I haven't eaten and I'm like, oh no.
And when you get on those cues, because sometimes when we're busy and we're focusing on other things, sometimes you miss those cues.
Yeah.
And when you miss those cues and you push past that feeling of that first initial feeling of hunger, then it can often become much stronger. And the feeling in your stomach can become much, much stronger. And when you're at that point, it's actually much harder when you do start eating to control how much you eat. Because your body's almost like going to this point of, I'm really, really, really hungry. So I need to eat a lot more food because my hunger level's right up here. It's trying to be really loud. It's basically like turning up your hunger volume.
It goes from rumble to a growl.
And we naturally tend to respond to that by eating more. And so tuning into that and kind of getting it in the first, when you first start experiencing that, that's just one way of helping to kind of tune into what your body actually needs and how much it needs. But when it comes to false alarm hunger, false alarm hunger, like I said, sometimes it can feel like hunger because it might have some of the same sensations. So emotional hunger, for example, sometimes when we're lonely or sad or depressed, we often use food as a comfort. We choose food because it's making us feel better. It's bringing us comfort. It's bringing us joy. Right from the time we were a baby, food has always been something that brings comfort. And so that's just something that we are born with, literally. We are born with knowing that food is comfort, but it's not necessarily true hunger. And often with emotional hunger, you don't feel the same growling in your stomach, but you feel it in your stomach, but it's a bit lower. It's kind of in that, if you were to hold your belly, and so your belly button is like in the middle of your palms, that's often where we feel emotional hunger. And when you're feeling sad or you're feeling depressed, you get that sensation in your gut, basically. And that's often what we can confuse with real hunger, because it's very close to that other section where we feel the rumble. It's just a bit lower. Right. And sometimes when we eat in that state, you'll notice a subtle difference because it's not actually giving you the same sensation often that you would get if you were hungry. When you're hungry and you eat, it's I feel so much better. When it's emotional hunger and you eat, you don't necessarily feel so much better. You just keep wanting to eat because you just keep wanting that sensation of comfort, if that makes sense.
I can really identify with that. Like, it's more like I don't feel better. I feel less. Like I can feel less. So if I wasn't feeling very great, I will feel that less, but I won't feel better, satisfied, like yummy, all of those like cues of that. That's my experience. And I wonder if we would be able to have people go into this a little bit more, or do you want to move into some like this more snacking part and move into that?
Sure. Do we have a little bit of time just to cover just a couple of different false alarm hungers, just so people could maybe if they haven't experienced that emotional hunger, there might be some others that have come up that might also be good ones to identify and see if you felt these yourself. Another one, it is kind of close to emotional hunger, but it's anxiety, stress, and nervous energy. Often when we're feeling this emotion, we eat because we try and distract ourselves. So if you're stressed about something or you're nervous about something, often you want to do something with your hands. You want to keep busy because you've got all this nervous energy. And sometimes eating is just one of those things. And sometimes it can be a mindless thing that you're just doing. There's often no real sensation in your stomach when it's nervous or anxious eating. And it's false alarm hunger. It's not true hunger. Another one that can be a big one for people is cravings, and the sensation you get when you're experiencing cravings. And people have cravings for different things, but one that it's an easy one for me to, and it might be an easy one for you to kind of think about straight away. If you were walking down the street or through the mall and you walk past the movie theater and you smell that butter popcorn, and it almost makes your mouth water. If you like popcorn, if you're a popcorn kind of person, cravings can bring sensations like salivation to your mouth. If you're a chocolate person and you might be thinking about chocolate and your mouth starts watering, or French fries or whatever it might be. Cravings often bring physical sensations, but again, they're not true hunger. Often cravings don't cause that grumbling in your stomach. They might cause the salivation in your mouth, but it's not necessarily a hunger that's felt. And often with cravings, this is where distraction can be really good to help you identify, am I really hungry? Maybe I am really hungry, and it just happened to be that I smelt the popcorn and it reminded me that I'm hungry. If you distract yourself for 5 or 10 minutes, go do something else, and then check back in with yourself, that's how you tell if it was real hunger or if it was a craving. Because chances are, once you get away from that smell or that visual or whatever it might be, drink a glass of water. If you're not actually feeling that sensation of hunger, chances are it was probably just a craving. Another one is programmed eating. Programmed eating, what I mean by that is if you've had a really late lunch, maybe you've had brunch, but you're used to eating lunch at 1 o'clock every day, and your work break happens and it's 1 o'clock, you might be programmed to think that, oh, well, I should eat lunch now because this is when I always eat lunch. Even though maybe you just ate brunch an hour and a half ago and you're still full from that, programmed eating is just thinking that you should be eating, either because everyone else is eating, it's your lunch break, whatever it might be. So again, that's when it's great to tune in, to start becoming mindful of those signals that your body is giving you. And another one is thirst. And I just looked at my water when I thought of that. So thirst, when you're dehydrated, when you haven't had enough water throughout the day, your thirst receptor is very close. It's in a very similar spot in your brain as where your hunger receptor is. And sometimes you can just get a little bit confused. Your brain sends out a signal saying, I'm thirsty, and you misread it a little bit, thinking that you're hungry. Sometimes it's a good idea to drink some water first. Remind yourself to drink water, because it can just be that your body is thirsty. Your body needs hydration rather than actual food. And again, practicing those things, having an idea that, well, these things can happen throughout the day. What could I do to test it out so that I am becoming a little more in tune with my body and with what my body is trying to tell me?
Love it. Love it. Yeah, my little tester is actually the Nurture Wheel, which is a tool that I use through my coaching, but because I needed it myself, of course. So I sort of go, okay, if there's another need here, if there's another thing that needs nourishment or needs me to respond, something going on internally, then, let me just use this wheel first as a distraction, give it a little spin, and it lands in one of these 7 areas where I can then zero in and see if that needs some nurture, or, if it's just intuitively that I can go into that. And I know that there's some eating disordered groups that are starting to use it as well. And I just feel directing myself towards giving myself a bit of nurture of whatever kind can definitely be a great starting place. And water is definitely one of those things that is really nurturing to the body. It helps clean out all the stuff we don't need. So right?
I think that tool would also, that just sounds like such a great tool that you could use for helping to identify emotional hunger.
Yeah,
exactly. To identify that, what is it that I'm actually needing? Do I need comfort? Do I need love? Do I need connection? What is it that's missing? That sounds like it'd be a great tool for helping with that.
Yeah. It's been helping me. It's definitely been helping me just make different choices and that kind of thing. So, so do you want to move into some sort of a practice? Is a guided something to do with snacking, or how does that sound to you?
Sure. Yeah. So I was thinking about, as far as just being able to provide a little bit of a tool because when it does come to hunger, there's definitely some things that you can do throughout the day how you balance your meals, when you're timing your snacks, to try and keep either hunger at bay or give your body what it needs so that you're not feeling hungry in the afternoon. And would you like to go through some of those things, or?
Yeah, that would be great. So is there anything that people need to have around, or any sort of setup for this, or because I don't know what it is exactly yet? So is there
Yeah, so I think imagination. I think we can just use our imagination,
right?
because what I thought we could do is just go through what a balanced plate looks like to begin with, to just help people to be able to create balance in the meals that they're eating.
Okay.
Because when we have balance in the types of foods that we eat, we're providing our body everything that it needs.
Okay.
Sometimes, just kind of touching back on cravings a little bit, sometimes when we don't eat balanced meals throughout the day, we start to crave a particular type of food. And it could either be a food that's missing throughout the day, or it could be the food that we've been eating a lot of during the day. Carbohydrates can do this, or sugar can do this, that by the end of the day, we're still really craving that one thing that we've been eating a lot of during the day.
Right.
And so balancing out meals can be just such a good way to make sure we're getting everything we need and we're nourishing our body.
Okay.
And
so can I actually, like, just say give people a pause in case they actually want to have a plate in front of them?
Yeah, for sure.
In their body. And so we'll just give you listeners and people who are on the call just a moment to do that.
So I'm just going to jump in there just to say, so if you want to, why don't you go and get a typical dinner plate that you would have dinner or you would have lunch on. And I know this might sound silly, but if you're in your house, you could do this. And if not, you'll just have to imagine it. But grab what you would typically do for breakfast. So if you eat cereal for breakfast, I want you to grab your cereal and grab your bowl that you would put it in and come back with that. Just those couple of tools.
Yeah. Okay. So let's give you guys a minute or so to do that. Those who want to do that, and those who are going to stay in the imaginal realm, in our imagination, then we'll just pause it here, and we'll get back to you in just a moment.